you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be the update to Sting, the Stamina Nightblade for the Dragonhold DLC. Now the purpose of this particular build is to have a lot of ease of use in comparison to some of the other Nightblades out there. Nightblades can be quite complex, so this has been simplified so it's not that difficult to get into if you're quite new to the Nightblade, or even in fact if you're not and you just want something simple and easy to use that is effective. Now, there are going to be multiple different loadouts for this as far as gear is concerned. You do not need trial gear for this, but there are going to be options, of course, if you choose to. Now, first of all, we're going to go into the stats. So just make sure all of our buffs and bonuses are on, which I think is pretty much it, actually, apart from potion. We are on 18.5k max health, 35.5k max stamina, 1.3k stam recovery, 11k resists across the board, with 4.6k weapon damage and 44% crit. That crit chance will actually go up to a stupid amount. With the trial setup, we actually have a much higher crit chance flat out, but with this particular setup, we do end up with 100% crit anyway, within certain time periods. However, don't worry about that too much now, we're going to explain that later. 64 points into max stamina, Shadow Munderstone, and we're using max health, max stamina food. Now, there's going to be two different rotations for this, depending on how comfortable you are with the Nightblade, so that will determine what food you use as well. So if you are very comfortable with your sustain and you like doing the faster rotation, you can of course use Arteum Takeaway Broth. Failing that, if you want to use the heavy attack variation of it, you can use this stuff which we've got on right now. And this will give you max health, max stamina. Just bear in mind, if you do use this recovery food, your health will go down considerably and you might want to put on a health glyph to just cover that little gap. So now we're going to go into the skills. These are going to be explained in detail. If you do skip this section, of course, that's entirely up to you. You don't have to listen to this if you don't want to, but if you ask questions in the comment section below that have already been answered, that's at your own risk, because of course I will not be answering those. Once it's been explained once, there's no need for me to do it again. You can press rewind. Anyway, first of all, we are using Rending Slashes. This is in our dual wield skill line. Second ability unlock, starts off as Twin Slashes, morph it to Rending Slashes. Very simple. This is a direct damage over time ability at the same time. So the initial hit is direct damage, the damage over time continues afterwards. So it's a combination of skills, but essentially you want to put this on the target first of all and leave it running for its full duration and then reapply it when it runs out. Very simple. The other morph of this, however, Blood Craze, you can choose instead. The physical hit initially is lower, but the damage over time is exactly the same, and to benefit from the loss of the initial hit, you will actually heal every 2 seconds instead. So if you want a little bit more survivability, you can use the other morph, but this one does a little bit more damage flat out, just on the initial hit once every 10 seconds. Next up is Barb Trap. This is in the Fighters Guild skill line. This is the last ability to unlock in the skill line, actually. Starts off as Trap Beast, morph it to Barb Trap. This is very simple. This goes down on the ground and underneath the target. If you pop this beast trap, which it will happen if anyone stands in it, it will actually do physical damage over time and grant you minor force, increasing all of your critical damage done by 10%. That's very important. We do want to get as much crit damage as possible. However, this will immobilize the target. If it can't be immobilized, do not worry, you still will get the effects. Essentially, this is a buff for us, but we do want to get the damage over time as well. So be very aware in certain mechanics if tanks are pulling stuff in where you're putting your beast traps, because if they need to chain stuff and they get CC'd by this, you're going to be in trouble. But keep it under the boss at all times, of course, if you can. Now, next up is Relentless Focus. This is in our Assassin skill line. Last ability to unlock starts off as Grim Focus, morph it to Relentless Focus. Now, this is actually a lot simpler than it looks. This will last 1 minute. Once you activate it, it lasts an entire minute. Used to last 10 seconds, then 20 seconds. Now it lasts a minute. This is insane. So, you don't have to cast this very often as an active buff. But what it does is every single time you do a light attack or a heavy attack, you will get 2% damage reduction for the duration. Forever, in fact, until you consume it. Now, this can stack up to 5 times, giving you a maximum of 10. Just bear in mind, this doesn't really say how the light attacks and heavy attacks benefit. It just says up to 5. Technically, that's correct. Light attacks up to 5 will give you 5 stacks of this. Heavy attacks, however, count as 2 stacks. So you can do 5 lights, or you can do 2 heavies and a light, or you can do 1 heavy and 3 lights, or you can do 3 heavies and you've overshot it, but you've maxed it anyway. Now, when this is maxed, the skill will change from the visual that you see there, the hand kind of visual, and it will change to this. So if we look here, you can see each light attack will give a duplicate of that buff. You can see it with a digit in the bottom there, number 1, number 2, and it will go up to 5. Now, the ability itself on the bar no longer looks like that visual. It now has a purple bow effect on it. And if you fire it, this happens. You fire a massive bow, it does loads of damage, and it resets again. So all of your light attack or heavy attack ticks have gone, your bow is gone, but you still keep that buff to be able to reapply it. Now, just be aware, of course, if you do activate the bow, it will do massive damage, but it will remove the mitigation bonus. And if you're within 7 meters of the target, it will heal you. The heal is actually pretty huge. It's like 20 to 25k heal if you're buffed, and sometimes a bit higher. So if you keep this in your rotation, you can actually fire this twice every rotation, have massive heals, really good damage output, and good mitigation. But if you choose to keep it and don't fire the bow, you will keep the mitigation bonus, and that's really helpful during execute, actually. But we'll get to that in the rotation. Essentially, keep up your light attacks and heavy attacks, and every time you get the purple bow visual, you can fire it. But again, once we get to the rotation, that'll make a lot more sense. Surprise attack is, of course, our main spammable. This is in our Shadow skill line. First ability to unlock starts off as Veiled Strike, morph it to Surprise Attack. Now, this is our single target spammable that we use pretty much all the time, apart from our dots and bonuses and all that good stuff. So you just need to keep this up as much as you can. This will actually do physical damage to the target, and if you're flanking the enemy, you will actually attach a debuff to them, which will reduce their physical resistance by 5% for 10 seconds. That doesn't mean your penetration strictly goes up. That means the entire group has higher damage output because the resistances have been removed. So that's very, very important. It works out top end somewhere around the 900 mark, which is actually pretty substantial, especially if you don't have all the buffs and bonuses. And even if you do, it can close the downtime between other buffs and bonuses that they fall on or off. So this is a very important ability to keep up. Not so effective for the debuff on dragons, but on anything else, absolutely fine. This is very, very important. So again, during execute, although you won't be using this ability per se, you can apply it once every 10 seconds just to keep that debuff up. Next up is our execute spammable. Now this is in the assassin skill line. This, let me go back to my skills, is the first ability to unlock. Starts off as Assassin Blade, morph it to Killer's Blade. Now this only, pay very close attention to this, this only gets used while the enemy is 25% health and lower. So this will actually do a massive amount of damage, up to 300% extra if they're low health. If they're not low health, it will not. Do not use this at any time apart from then. So, for the most part, we use this as our main spammable, Surprise Attack, which is very nice. But when their health is low, you start stabbing them with this instead. You swap skills. Now, you will heal if you target someone and hit them with it and they die within 2 seconds. Small heal, but it still helps, especially if there's lots and lots of targets, so you can run around and stab and stuff. But this does scale off of your max health. So just bear in mind, any Nightblade tanks out there, if you do have this on your bar and you do stab something with this just before it dies, within 2 seconds, obviously, you can get rather substantial heal out of this. So just bear that in mind. But again, this is just for execute. Low health only. Flawless Dawnbreaker is our main ultimate on our front bar, and this is here just for stats. We will go over the passives and bonuses and such later, after the skills are explained. But this essentially just sits on our bar. We do not use this. Yes, it's got benefits to it. It does do nice damage. It does give us increased weapon damage as well. So technically, you could use this at execute and have a nice uptime on extra weapon damage, but we're not really going to do that. We're using our back bar ultimate all the time. It's incredibly cheap, it's incredibly powerful. We're definitely using the back bar one. But in situations where there's undead, Daedra, werewolves and such, you never know. You might want to benefit from it. It's up to you. But this is just for passives. The passives are coming up later. Again, this is also technically just for passives, but we will benefit from this if we use it. This is Ring of Preservation, second ability to unlock in the Fighters Guild skill line. Starts off as Circle of Protection, morph it to Ring of Preservation. Now this will actually put a Circle of Protection type on the ground, just like the original morph, and anyone caught inside of this will get a 10% increase to stam recovery. They will get 8% reduction to all damage taken in the form of minor protection, and they will heal once every half a second for 8 seconds. This is a rapid heal, it's very, very powerful, and you only want to use this in situations where you're in trouble. If you don't have this, or you don't really preference it, you can of course use Echoing Vigor, and that will actually heal you and your group as well, so you could use that instead. But just bear in mind, of course, when I get to the passives, this will make a lot more sense as to why this is here, so you may want to use this instead. Next up, of course, is Poison Injection. This is in our bow skill line. This is the 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Poison Arrow, morph it to Poison Injection. This is very, very simple. It goes on the target in form of a single target damage over time with a direct hit initially, and it lasts for 10 seconds. It does poison damage, but it gets more aggressive the lower the health. So, when the target is below 50% health, they will take more and more and more damage. And alongside this execute here, it's very, very handy. Now, our weapon on our back bar is going to benefit from this a lot, so do not let this ability fall off. Next up is Consuming Trap. Yes, of course we're still using this. Why wouldn't we be? It did get reduced in overall damage, but it's still very, very strong. It's in a Soul Magic skill line. You don't need to unlock this. You get it free with the game. You will need to morph it, however, to Consuming Trap. Damage went down a little bit. It's still very, very high. It scales off of your maximum stat, so this will scale off of stamina for us, giving us physical damage, whereas if you got loads of magic, it will actually scale off of that instead. And this will do damage over time for 10 seconds. But if the target dies, then you will get back 20% of all your resources. So in big ad pulls, or where there's just an ad present, make sure this is on the target at all times, not only for the damage output, but because if it dies, you will get so much back. It's very, very easy to sustain in big cluster areas where you put this on multiple targets and start killing really, really quickly. You can actually actively go full out hell for leather, almost spammy rotations, while this is constantly giving you juice back. So the enemy must die while it's active, just bear that in mind. Next is Dark Shade. This is in our Shadow skill line. 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Summon Shade, morph it to Dark Shade. Now this lasts for 20 seconds. It summons a shade to attack the enemy. It does do magic damage, so your spell pen will need to be considered. But this will actually scale off your highest resources. So before, where this used to scale off of Magicka and you'll only get the damage boost if you had a high magic pool, you'll still get a high boost from this with a high stam pool because it scales off of either one. Now, this also not only does damage to the target that is hit and does a nice spin as well, doing more damage, this actually applies minor maim, so it reduces the target's damage output by 15%, so it's actually a debuff as well. This is next. The Arrow Barrage is from the Bow skill line. 2nd ability to unlock. Starts off as Volley, morph it to Arrow Barrage. This is very, very simple. Big AoE on the ground. Very, very nice damage every 1 second. Do not let this run out. It's expensive. Don't spam it, but don't let it run out either. If it runs out for a couple of seconds at most, you're okay. If it runs out for anything longer than that, your rotation needs some work, and you should probably change this to Endless Hail instead, which has got a longer duration, but less damage. Our main ultimate is Incapacitating Strike, of course. This is in our Assassination skill line. You need level 12 to unlock this in this skill line. Starts off as Deathstroke, morph it to Incapacitating Strike. Now, this is ridiculously cheap. This does have a channel time, or a cast time, so you can't activate it and swap bars instantly. So if you do activate this, in the rotation, I'll show you there's a skill afterwards. But if you do activate it at the end of your rotation, you want to swap bars, sneak in a light attack, and then you won't be stopped in your rotation. But if you do try and swap or cancel it, it will not work. Now, this does disease damage in direct damage, an initial hit. And for 6 seconds, this will increase all of your damage done to that target by 20%. No other targets, just the one affected. Also, not only is this very, very cheap at 73 ultimate, but if you do cast this while you have 120 ultimate, it will be green instead of red. And this will do a wicked spin, and it will actually silence the target for 3 seconds, not enabling them to actually cast spells. So that's very handy. Not for all PvE content, but it's very nice in certain situations. While slotted also, you gain Reeve, which is a relatively recent ability, and you restore 100 Magicka and 100 Stamina when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack to an enemy that has a negative effect on them. So keep up your light attacks, you will get resources back. It's very, very important. Not only will you benefit from Relentless Focus, but you will also benefit from Reeve over here. Now, passives. This is going to be very, very simple, but we are going to go through them all, of course. First of all, in the Assassin skill line, increases your weapon and spell damage by 10% while you are sneaking or invisible. That's not that important. Increases your duration of stun from sneak. That's not that important. So you can dump this if you really want to. We're not going to be sneaking around. When an enemy dies within 2 seconds of being damaged by one of your assassination abilities, you restore 1876 Magicka or Stamina, whichever of the two is higher. Our highest is Stamina, so when things die, we will get resources back. This is stupid. Very, very nice indeed. But it must be damaged by one of your assassination abilities. So you have to have executed it or hit it with your Relentless Focus. So, or even with Incap. So this is very important. Make sure you are hitting all those targets. If something's going to die very quickly, you should be the one stabbing it, and you will get stamina back. You actually get almost the full cost back, so it's very, very important. Increases your weapon and spell crit ratings by 4, 3, 8 for each assassin ability slotted. We actually have 2 on this bar. We have Relentless Focus and our Execute. On the back bar, we have the 1. So for each one, you will actually get a crit bonus, which is nice. This increases your critical damage by 10%. That does stack with Beast Trap. And this relies on you having an assassination ability on your bar. We do have one here, so we do benefit from this. And we do have one here as well. So we have it on both bars. Very, very important to make sure you do have one skill from this skill line on each bar at least. Also, dealing critical damage grants you and your group minus savagery, increasing your crit rating. So all stamina DPSs are going to benefit from this because they're going to get extra crit. Now, at the beginning, you saw me put on a potion, and you saw me have a very low crit, like 44%. You'll notice now that it's 50. That, again, when we get to the gear, will go up dramatically. Yes, you saw 6k weapon damage there. Don't worry about that for now. That will go up dramatically based on our sets, and there are variations to this which will give you a flat passive increase to that anyway, but flat off the bat you're looking at 50% for us. Now, Shadow, of course, increases your health, stamina, and magic and recovery by 15%. Very, very nice indeed. Get this passive. Casting a Shadow's ability grants you major resolve for 6 seconds, increasing your physical and spell resistance. This duration is increased by 25% for each piece of heavy armor worn. We're only wearing 1 piece of heavy armor at the moment, but this is really, really simple. For using Surprise Attack, or for using our Shade, both of which are going to be used on the front and the back in our rotation, you get a resistance buff. You don't have to slot a resistance buff, you get it anyway. That's really, really important. You are quite tanky without the additional need to put in a buff. But you must keep up your rotation. If you do so, this will never ever run out. If you don't, then it will. Increases your max health by 3% for each shadow ability slotted. This is very important, by the way. We do have one on the front bar, we do have one on the back, so both bars we have 3%. If you had another one on this bar, you would get another 3%. So that's actually quite helpful. So you do want that, especially since our health is pretty low. Increases duration of your non-invisibility-based shadows abilities by 2 seconds. That is why our shade is much, much longer. Now, after drinking a potion, you gain 20 ultimate. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. Our ultimate can be borderline spammed in some situations. 73 ultimate. This gives you 20 straight away. 3 ulti regen a second for doing lights and heavy attacks. Plus, if you kill undead or Daedra or werewolves, when we get to the Fighters Guild passives, you can actually use your incapacitating strike a lot. This is very, very important. Get it quick. Increases your max magical by 8% while a siphon ability is slotted. That's not hugely essential, but we are using 1 magic ability. In fact, 2. So this will actually help us. Increases your healing done by 3% for each siphon ability slotted. Not important, we're not using one. And casting a siphon ability grants ultimate. 2 ultimate, in fact, once every 4 seconds. You can choose to use siphon and strikes and morph it to leech and strikes if you prefer, and this will benefit from that. Give you nice sustain and all the rest of it. And you can put that here if you want. But that will alter your passives, it will alter your resistance bonuses, and that's all for the sake of a little bit more sustain and 2 ultimate extra once every 4 seconds. Already tested, you do not need that extra recovery because everything is absolutely fine. But if you personally preference it or you feel like you need this, then it's entirely up to you. You can do so, and you will benefit from this passive. Dual wield, of course, we are using these on our front bar, so we will need every single passive of these. This increases the damage of dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So while you are weaving your execute with your light attacks and heavies, you will actually get extra damage out of those hits. Now, this is also a dual wield ability, so if you do have this running, this will get stronger as well, but execute rotations will be explained, so don't worry about that too much for now. Increases weapon damage by 6% of your offhand weapon. Now, your offhand does have less damage, so this will increase it. Reduces the stamina cost of dual wield abilities. We're only using 1, but we want to get the cost down, of course. This will give you a 15% damage bonus when attacking stunned, immobilized, disorient, or silenced enemies with dual wield attacks. And this will give you a bonus depending on the weapons you're using. Now, there are 2 different variations to this particular setup. One uses an axe and a dagger, so you'll get a crit bonus and a chance to bleed. This particular setup at the moment is using 2 swords. So you will get a 3% increase to all of your damage by 3% for each one. So at the moment, we've got a 6% increase to overall damage. But if you decide to use any other weapon combination, just bear in mind each individual one is per weapon. So the choice is yours what you use, but I do have 2 very different setups at the moment. Bow passives, you need every single one of these. This will give you a damage bonus of up to 12% for enemies at longer range, so that's very, very important. Obviously, on the run into a fight or during mechanics where you got to run in and out, you will have increased damage with your bow. This increases the crit rating while on that bar. This reduces the cost of their abilities. We do have 2 of them. You do want to get the cost down. They're expensive. Hawkeye, while you're dealing damage, any light attack or heavy attack that you do will increase your bow damage by 5%, stacking up to 5 times and lasting 5 seconds. As long as you keep your light attacks up, you can keep this up. But we're using dual wield and a bow. So, when we swap bars, we don't have that bonus anymore to apply. It will still carry over, but it will run out. When we get to the back, we'll reapply it as much as we can, but we won't ever really get the full potential for it, but we will benefit from it nonetheless. And of course, this will grant you major expedition if you dodge roll. If you dodge, you run faster. Just don't do this. Don't dodge and dodge and dodge and dodge. If you do that too often, too close together, you'll be penalized and it will cost you more. Light armor, we are using 1 piece of light armor with this particular setup, but if you're using the trial setup, then you don't need these. Same goes for heavy armor as well. But if you are using light armor or heavy armor in your helmet and shoulders, or even if your crafted set is actually doing that, you could do that as well. So even with the trial setup, you could change that. So you may want to do this anyway, but again, the choice is yours. You'll want the first 3 in the light armor passives to give you recovery and reduction to cost and spell resistance, and you'll want the first 3 in heavy to give you resistance, resource gain from being here, and increase max health. These are choices. If you have this setup, you can use all medium or 1 light and 1 heavy. If you have the trial setup, technically you can still do the same, but the choice is yours. What you will need, however, is all medium passives. This will increase your crit rating per piece worn. This will increase your stam recovery and reduction to cost. This will improve sneaking, which isn't that essential, but it's entirely up to you. This will increase your weapon damage by 15% for having 5 pieces. And this will increase your movement speed and reduction to cost for dodge roll, which is very, very nice indeed, because we are using that resource to damage and heal. So we want to make sure we get the cost down so that when we're evading, we don't just run out of juice. We are, of course, a stage 4 vampire. You can be whatever stage you want, but I'm comfortable with stage 4. So before you start crying in the chat about me being a stage 4 vampire and you don't need to, I choose to. You don't have to choose to do the same. You can, however, benefit from these passes if you're stage 2 or higher. This will increase your magicka and stam recovery, which is very, very nice. We're using both resources. It's extremely helpful, and you don't need a skill on your bar to do so. And stage 3 or higher will reduce the amount of damage you take while your health is low. Very, very important passive. Definitely utilize this if you are not scared of fire or the noise out there about people dying and making excuses. If you stand in fire, you can die, whether you're a vampire or not. Don't stand in stupid. Stage 4, by the way, is for this. You sneak really, really fast. Full speed, and you hide quicker in the dark as well. So, I use that for a lot of different things. Up to you. Fighters Guild, of course, you do need these for passives. This will reduce the cost of skills in this skill line. So, Barb Trap, very important. Get the cost down. This will increase your weapon damage for each ability slotted. So, passives that I said I was going to talk about. For being on the bar, 3% extra weapon damage. Same applies to this ultimate. They're just there for stats. This is actively used. This isn't. And on the back bar, of course, Ring of Preservation is there, giving us a 3% weapon damage bonus on the back bar, as well as a utility skill and heal. This will increase your ulti regen if you kill Undead, Daedra, or Werewolf. And I don't mean passively per second, I mean per kill. Every kill that you actively get, if you get the kill and blow for an Undead, Daedra, or Werewolf enemy, will give you 9 ultimate back. That stacked with your standard regen and your 20 points back for using a potion is disgusting. Very, very fast ultimate regen. Loads and loads of in-cap usage. Very, very nice indeed. And of course, any Fighters Guild abilities that you use, being our Beast Trap, the main one, you will actually do 20% extra damage to those types of enemies. We are using the Undaunted passives, of course. If you take a synergy, you will get 4% of all your resources back. Take the synergies. Every single one is there for you and your group. If you pick them up, you will benefit from whatever they do, because they're all beneficial, and you'll get stuff back. Don't listen to greedy tanks crying. If you take a synergy of any type, that one is on cooldown for 20 seconds. So, if you picked up a spear, which people, of course, are doing all the time on this dummy, here's a spear, pick it up. You're on cooldown. Tank can take the next one, or can just ask for another one. If you're going to sit here and hump this dummy all day long while claiming this is about sustain, don't go into a trial situation and claim you're not going to pick it up, because that means that this effectiveness you apparently have here is ineffective over here. If you're going to pick up the synergies on a dummy, you should be picking them up in the fight. Plenty enough to go around for everyone, and there's no harm in someone asking for another one. Now, of course, you will want these. If you're using 5 pieces of medium, 1 light and 1 heavy, which is a choice, then of course you'll get 6% resources across the board for using 3 different types. So more health, more stamina, more magic. If you're using 7 medium, this bonus will be 2% instead. Either way, you want this passive. We are, of course, a wood elf. Now, you can be an orc if you want, but I found that the sustain was suffering somewhat, and regardless of the higher weapon damage and the higher health and the heals and all that good stuff, it did actually get to a point where you had to change your rotation to put in more heavy attacks to recover. Although, if you could fire infinitely, you would, of course, get more damage, but we couldn't. Now, the wood elf had such good sustain that this actually outperformed versus the orc on this particular build in every single test. Normally only by about 1k, but it did. So flat out, yes, the orc technically has more damage, but because the sustain suffered, we had to claw so much back, we couldn't actually burst out our full potential. So if you're in an optimized situation, and it doesn't mean one way or no way, that means that you've got so many shinies that you never run out of juice. If you're in a situation like that, orc is going to do more damage. If you're not, and you're just in a standard trial situation where people have perhaps the odd spear here and there, you've got a couple of recovery bonuses and you're just doing what you can do based on what you're bringing, then a wood elf is going to outperform. Really, really nice. And he was a wood elf to start with, so it's quite fun to bring back the smallest character in the game. He has increased movement speed by 10% and physical and spell pen for 6 seconds after you dodge roll. So, you do get a dodge roll bonus, and speed bonus, sorry, from a dodge roll in your bow passives, but you also get one for being a wood elf as well, and your pen goes up. Now, just bear in mind, of course, we are using a magic ability that does magic damage, and we will need the penetration bonus if we do use it. Now, of course, you can get that from your group, but it also helps that we have it ourselves as well, just in case we're dodging out mechanics and our abilities are still firing. That's really helpful. Increases your stam recovery by 258. That is stupidly high. Stacking on top of our bonuses that we have, it's very, very nice indeed, and that's why our sustain is great. And we have a max stam bonus, same as the orc, of 2k. We are resistant to certain amount of poison damage, and we're immune to poison status effects. So if you do get hit with poison and a status effect applies, you get a damage over time on you, which really, really hurts. For us, it doesn't happen. We're immune to it. So that's really, really handy. We've got resistance to poison, we have high stam, very high recovery, and we have extra physical penetration and spell penetration and movement speed. So we're really, really nippy and we hit hard. Very, very nice indeed. Hugely important for this particular build. But again, like I said, if you want to go orc, you can do, but you're going to need to heavy attack some more. Finally, the most important passive in the game, in my opinion, medicinal use. If you use a potion, and you should be, you will obviously get a duration out of them. They will last a certain amount of time. These will be 30% longer no matter what you use, but the crafted pots are very, very important for this. We use actually Major Savagery, Major Brutality, and Major Endurance on our potions. They normally would last 36 seconds. With this passive, they last 47. The cooldown is actually 45, so we can have them up 100% of the time. Remember, they're consumable buffs. Keep them up just as much as any other buff. Don't run really, really dry and then go, oh, I need a potion now. Always use your potions. Okay, now I'm going to get into the gear. Now, there are 2 major options here, both of which are extremely viable, but one is stupidly easy to get. The other one might require a little bit of work. Now, the non-trial setup is what we're going to go with here. No trials required whatsoever. None. 2 swords of mechanical acuity. Known honed on one, sharpened on the other, with a poison. So double dot poisons, which do proc off of your weapon abilities and light attacks and heavy attacks. This is very important. Now, mechanical acuity, if you're not familiar with it, will give you a weapon damage bonus, a spell damage bonus, a stamina bonus, a mag bonus. And when you deal direct damage, which is what we're built for, you'll have a 15% chance to basically turn yourself all shiny and blue for 5 seconds, and all of your critical hits, or in fact, all of your hits will be a crit, excluding proc sets. Now, when I mean proc sets, I don't mean something that just activates like this, because this is technically a proc, yes, but it applies to our abilities, our basic hits, and our skills. This isn't a flat, separate damage bonus. So, our monster set is a separate damage bonus. That can't crit. But this applies to all of your active abilities, light attacks, heavy attacks, all that good stuff. So any of those will guaranteed critically hit if this is active. And it has an 18-second cooldown. The reason we have it on the front bar is so that we can take advantage of it on the front bar, because that's where we're doing the most damage. We want this to fire on the front. We don't want it to fire on the back. So if you have this on both bars, there's a very strong possibility that you're going to fire it off the back, and then by the time you get to the front, it's gone, and you're going to lose your burst. This has immense damage output if you can proc it at the right time. Sure, it's luck, but it's very, very nice indeed. The reason we've gone with 2 swords is because that will give us a 6% damage increase. We don't need a dagger to increase our crit chance, because when this fires, it's a 100% chance to crit. But if you change your gear, we're going to go over that in a moment and tell you what other choices you can have. The bow is on the back bar, of course, and that is a master's bow, and if you do a poison injection, this will actually increase your weapon damage effectively versus that target only by 301, so do not let your poison injection run out. If you don't have the master's bow, you can use Maelstrom if you prefer. It's less damage output, but it's still quite nice. And if you don't have any Dragonstar Arena or Maelstrom loot, don't worry. You can just put an agility bow on the back and you'll be just fine. It won't be the same damage output, but it will close the gap a little bit, having that extra stamina. Do not, however, put a mechanical acuity bow on the back. Do not do that. Weapons are this, only need to be on the front. You can do weapons and jewelry if you want, or weapons and 3 pieces of body armor. It's up to you. The monster set is Celine's. So you've got a stamina bonus, and when you do direct damage, you have a 15% chance to make a bear pop up and slap the target in the face. This is the same chance as this. But this applies to your skills and abilities, so they can crit, and this cannot crit. Bear that in mind. They're different applications of skills or abilities. They both fire off a condition, but they both have very different effects. And of course, you can change these to light and heavy, or to medium. It's entirely up to you. But you want them both in divines. The other set is New Moon's Acolyte. This gives you a crit bonus for both spell and physical, a weapon damage bonus and a spell damage bonus, a physical and spell penetration bonus, and it will give you an increase of 481 weapon and spell damage. Now this does increase the ability cost of all of your abilities, so your ultimates, your skills, all that good stuff, but recovery is really, really high anyway, so it's not actually a negative effect for this particular build. It's fine. Now, if you have been paying attention, you'll notice that these are 2 crafted sets. Mechanical Acuity is crafted. New Moon Acolyte is also crafted. And we have the jewelry of this as well. You can have it in any order you like. Any of these parts can be in any order. But you want Bloodthirsty and 2 Infused on the jewelry, of course. The only thing you must have very clear is you must have your 2 swords on your front bar. Now, the other option, the more advanced option, if you like, is you want a Nirnhone Dagger of Agility, a Sharpened Axe of Agility, then you want a New Moon Hat, New Moon Arms, and Reliquin on everything else. That's your other option. Bear in mind, of course, since this here and this here are both crafted, you can change these to heavy and light if you prefer. The reason for this is you have a higher max stamina bonus on the front bar, plus you have your crafted set still, so very high flat stats, plus you have your 5% minus Slayer, extra crit chance, and your extra stamina, and your light and heavy attacks do physical damage to the target, and it ticks every 1 second, stacking up to 20. If you keep your light attacks up, this won't run out. If you can't keep them up, it will run out. This can be swapped for Alkosh if you prefer, if you've got lots and lots of synergies, but flat out, this is actually a very nice single target damage over time effect, which again, also can't crit, but we don't have mechanical acuity on, so it doesn't make a difference. You'll notice, by the way, since we've changed this, instead of having a 100% crit chance with mechanical acuity when it fires, we actually sit quite comfortably on 65.9. We have changed the weapons on purpose because instead of having the sword bonus, we need the dagger and the axe for the bleed and the crit chance because we no longer have that proc. So, those are your 2 options. Now, just to recap, 2 agility, 5 New Moon, 5 Reliquin is your trial setup if you have access to them. But if you don't have access to any trial gear, you want New Moon, Mechanical Acuity, and Celine. That will all be on the website, of course, but those are the 2 variations. The difference between the 2 is very small, surprisingly. Your full crafted setup will actually pump out anywhere around 70 to 72k single target DPS if we're using the cheesy dummy as an example. That's excluding some of the variables, by the way, because there are a few things missing. There's no minor courage, there's no major slayer, and of course there's no major vulnerability, so it can go higher. With the trial setup, however, you can hit 77 to 80k, sometimes 81 if you're lucky. So there is a difference, but it's not massive. Anything over 70k is happy days anyway. So the choice is yours. Keep it simple for yourself, or go and get some harder to get gear. Now, going to go into the champion points, then I'm going to explain the rotation. We'll start with the red stuff, because I always go there first. So, 72 into Ironclad to reduce the amount of direct damage we take. 64 and 64 for all other damage types to be reduced by 13%. And 19% in here, so 51 points to reduce damage over time. Don't forget you've got Unchained, which means if you do break free, your next stamina ability is cheaper, so use something really expensive. Bear in mind, of course, all of these can be changed in the red tree depending on content. If you need to plug some of this, or some of this, or even some of this stuff, you can change out what you need to, but this is kind of what I use for all-round stuff. 19 points in quick recovery as well to increase the amount of healing received we gain. And of course, for unlocking this, from 10 points in this tree, you will take less damage while resurrecting people. 44 into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 tenacity, 75 Mooncalf for extra recovery and return from heavy attacks. 72 into Tumbling to reduce the cost of dodge roll. And of course, Shadow Ward, because we've got 4 points left, we might as well put them into something. And that will unlock the Treasure Hunter passive, having 75 points in this tree, which means if you're farming for loot, it's a lot easier because you get more loot from chests. Nothing in here. 66 into direct damage, because we're doing a shit ton of direct damage. 9 points into Physical Weapons Expert to increase our light and heavy attacks. Now, of course, that does also affect this. They are beneficial on both sides, but you want more into Master at Arms, because although we are doing a lot of lights and heavies, and they do benefit from Master at Arms, our skills benefit from Master at Arms as well. So don't go too top heavy into this, because you do want to make your skills do lots and lots of damage. Also, for having 75 in this tree, low health, light and heavy attacks will do 5% more damage. 51 into Thermitage, we are doing damage over time. Not a massive amount, but we are still contributing towards that nonetheless. So it's a good area here to put 51 into. I did try lower, I did try higher. This was actually quite comfy. 61 into Precise Strikes to increase our critical damage by 21%. Remember, we've got the Shadow Munderstone for 19%. We've got 21% here. We've got the Beast Trap for 10%. We've got our passive for 10%. We've got very, very high crit damage. We only need 34 points in here for our penetration values, because if you're going to try and hit 18200, not only do you have benefits from other people in the group for buffs and bonuses and such, but we have our own as well in our gear. So without Surprise Attack, we can actually hit 18200 just by our passives and our Sharpened Weapon and our New Moon set. So we've got lots and lots of different penetrating values already. Yes, we will occasionally overcap, but then if the buffs and bonuses are off, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll hit them on the nose. But flat out, without dodge roll considered and without surprise attack considered, we can actually hit cap quite easily if your group brings those bonuses. 49 into Mighty as well, which will increase all of our physical, disease, and poison damage, which is all we're doing, except for our Shadow, so our Shade even, all increased by 11%. Now, rotation. This is actually going to be a lot simpler than you would possibly think. So, you can have the whole dynamic stuff where people just basically keep dots up, spam stuff, and every time they see the bow, they fire it. You can do that if you want, but I'm going to give you a static rotation where you never ever have to change it and everything is just fine, except for Execute. So, you want your Grim Focus running, or Relentless Focus. That lasts a minute, so that's nice and easy. Beast Trap down, swap bars. This is where you basically start once those two buffs are active. So, you want Arrow Barrage first, then Light Attack, Poison Injection, Light Attack, Shade, Light Attack, Consume and Trap, and swap bars. And that looks like this. Light Poison, Light Shade, there's the Shadow, Light Consume and Trap, swap bars. Now, when you are in your rotation properly, that will allow, after your second rotation, for your Relentless Focus to start turning into the bow. As long as you keep up your light attacks, you must keep them up. So let's just put this up to 5 and start the rotation as though we already have it ready. So, Volley, Light, Poison, Light, Shadow, Light, Trap, Swap. Your bow is ready. What you need to do is fire it with a light attack. Then, Light Surprise, Light Surprise, Light Surprise, Light Rending, Light Delay, Bow, Light Beast Trap, Swap. Why did I say delay? Because this has been calculated to the point where, we'll use this dummy over here actually, where every light attack has been considered for those procs. Just make sure it's ready. So, Volley, Light Poison, Light Shadow, Light Consume and Trap, Light Bow. So, light attack is 1, 2, 3, 4. 5th light attack will make the bow come up. There it is. Then fire it. But, to make it change, there is a very small delay. So if you can keep on top of it and your light attacks are perfect, You will make that happen without fail every single time. But you mustn't do this really fast, because you'll just end up recasting it. You need to cast it. Let's get it ready. When it's ready. So, your 5th light attack needs to be a full one. So let him do the full swing. Usually you can go quite quick, and you don't need to see the full animation for the light attack. Like that. If you do try and animation cancel it, you will actually just recast Relentless Focus. Yes, your bow will be ready afterwards, but you can waste time. So make sure the whole front bar rotation is exactly like this. Let me get that ready. Bow. Light surprise. Light surprise. Light surprise. Light rending. Light delay. Bow. Light beast trap. Swap. Now, if your Relentless Focus is about to run out, this is when you can do exactly what I told you not to do. This is when, we'll get the bow ready again, you can do this instead. We're going to reapply it and make sure everything's ready. It's got like 10 seconds left for argument's sake. So light bow, surprise, 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 render, animation cancel that, and then hit it. When I say animation cancel, I just mean do it quick so it doesn't do a full light attack. So if your Relentless Focus is about to run out and you can see it, you can track it, that's when instead of putting in the delay, you deliberately do it fast, because then you will force yourself to recast it, and then you can cast your bow. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but I'm going to go through again very, very quickly just to show you what it looks like. We'll make sure the bow is ready first of all. Ignore the numbers, they're not going to count for now because we're halfway through the fight anyway. So beast trap, swap, bow, light poison, light shadow, trap, surprise, 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 rending, delay, bow, beast trap, swap, volley, light, shadow, light. If your ultimate is ready, this is when you use it. Light trap, swap, bow, surprise, 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 rending, bow's ready, hit it, off you go again. Volley, light, poison, light, shadow, light, trap, swap. Be very careful because sometimes you can lag out and miss your light attacks. If that happens, make sure that before you fire your bow, because it should be ready, you get the light attack in. It's tricky, takes a bit of practice. Always cast your ultimate after the shadow, because then light, shadow, light, ultimate, you've got a 0.4 second cast delay where you can't swap bars. Don't waste that time. Activate the ultimate, light attack, trap, swap. That will fill the gap. So again, hopefully that's not too confusing, but be very aware that your light attacks are timed perfectly to be able to always apply the bow at the right time, and if it is about to run out, then take off your delay and just activate it and then fire your bow afterwards. Now, what do you do if you're running out of resources? Or what do you do if you're using flat food? Instead of doing this 3 times, light surprise, light surprise, light surprise, you got 2 choices. You can do 1 light surprise and 1 heavy, and that will stack up 2 stacks. Or you can just heavy surprise attack, then render, then bow, then beast trap, then swap. That one is a lot easier because it will guarantee your bow is ready. You don't have to mess with delays, but it depends on your experience. If that's confusing, rewind it, do it again. That can be a little bit weird for people not used to the Nightblade. Essentially, the rotation won't mess you up because it's all done on purpose for you, but it will take a little bit of practice to get used to it and get a feel for that bow proc itself. Now, here's a little bit of a screenshot here. Actually, it's a full screenshot, but we'll put it on the side so you can see it. This is showing what you can expect on a fairly good day. You can get much higher. You can get sort of 80 to 81, but on PTS, unfortunately, at the moment, it is a bit buggy. There are some light attacks that don't fire. There's even some skills that don't fire, so you just have to consider that as not necessarily a best-case scenario, but you're looking around 77 to 81k. If you're using the crafted stuff, of course, like I said earlier, you can hit 70, 72, no problem whatsoever, and no one's going to know any difference because you're still going to be hitting like a steam train. Plus, you've got execute going out left, right, and center. Just before we finish, by the way, your execute rotation is very simple. Take off everything you know. Leave your Relentless Focus running with the bow like this. See the purple? Leave it. Don't fire it. Leave it there. That will give you your 10% mitigation bonus, and it will never run out as long as you're in combat, even if Relentless Focus runs out. It will stay with you forever. Your execute rotation is simple. Volley, light, poison, swap, stab it 6 times. Beast Trap, swap, volley, light, poison. If your ultimate is ready, press it and sneak in a Soul Trap. 6 executes. Beast Trap, swap, volley, light, poison, swap, execute, execute, execute. You only need 2 skills, volley and your poison injection. If you fire off your ultimate, you can put it between volley and poison injection if you want, or you can sneak in a trap just to make sure you don't waste time on the back bar. Choice is yours. Anyway, hopefully that helped. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. And hopefully you have fun with this build. First of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. And if you are not subscribed on YouTube, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook. And of course, I have rebuilt the entire thing. XynodeGaming.com is up and running again. All the written guides are there. Enjoy. Once again, thank you very much for watching. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.